Hi, so I am going to make a kind of a video lecture about the divisions and the creation of the Constitution. Because I know that's something I feel like a lot of my friends are saying, like they don't know really about that stuff. And so I'm going to kind of explain the divisions that happened during the creation of the Constitution, like what parts made people fight and stuff. And I'm going to go and kind of show the different what the Federalists wanted, what the Anti-Federalists wanted, and kind of the division that was created with that. Um, so, first off, when we were trying to figure out how we want the government under the new Constitution, we have a lot of different plans. We have the Virginia plan, which wanted a bicameral legislature, and it wanted the representatives in each house to be determined by proportional representation. So, it's proportional to like the state's population. It's not just by votes. Also, we have James Madison suggested the idea of branches of government, and that's really important because the whole checks and balance system and that I think is a big factor in what makes our government fair. Then we have the New Jersey plan, which is for a unicameral legislature where every state would receive one vote. So that's like the more equality. So people are fighting over these two plans. Because one of them would favor maybe states with larger populations, and the other one would maybe discard states with larger populations and stuff. So there's a lot of fighting. So they created the Great Compromise, and that means there were two houses, the Senate and the House of Representatives, and the Senate would have two representatives per state, and the House would be elected by the proportional representation, which is the proportions by population. So we have, the two houses, and that's what we decided. Also, there was fears that the national government would have too many powers, so they created the Electoral College, which in my personal opinion, I don't like the Electoral College. I feel like popular votes are more accurate. So I still don't understand why, they made the Electoral College, but they did to help keep, and it might have been more useful then, keep the government in power. Also, senators would be elected by state legislatures and not by the voters. So another thing, it's kind of like the Electoral College in a way. Also, another issue that came up, another really dividing issue, was slavery, and how much there were slave states and there were free states, and the slave states kind of wanted to be able to maybe count their slaves as more population, get more representation, but they're like, how much of a person is a slave? And so they had the 3/5 compromise, so a slave counted as 3/5 of a person. So here's the actual definition. Stated that 3/5 of a state's slave population would be counted when determining representation in the House of Representatives. So, yeah, slaves are 3/5. And that solved that problem. Before I go on, I also want to talk about why they wanted a constitution. They decided that they needed a stronger central government, because the government that was going on after the revolution was really dysfunctional and not really working under the articles, and they needed things that the government could do, like raise an army, collect taxes, and regulate commerce. Some people were afraid that there would be too much power and it would be bad, but they decided that they needed more control. So they had ratifying conventions that they were held in each state to see if the Constitution would be accepted. So supporters of the Constitution were Federalists, and in general, Federalists, they were for a national government. They were for the nation rather than state rights. So they were big on national government. So they would like the Constitution because they believe in a strong central government. And Federalists had, this is quoting this book, Federalists had faith that the elites that would come to dominate both federal and state governments would act in the interests of the entire nation. So they trusted the big leaders. Now we have the Anti-Federalists who oppose a strong central government. They think that states should have sovereignty and the state should be deciding what they want to do. The Anti-Federalists saw that in the government they saw the tyranny that paralleled the British monarch, so they felt like it was a lot like the British monarchy. It wasn't free. And they believed that the best way to counter this is to give power to the individual states. And they said that a major problem was that the new government was not based on Republican principles. So what they wanted was a Bill of Rights, which is not in the original Constitution. It comes later. Oh, there's a spider. Okay, sorry. So there was some states that were really hard to win over because there wasn't a Bill of Rights. So some of those states that were hard to win over were New York, Virginia, and Massachusetts. And finally, the last state to pass it was New York. And that happened on July 26, 1788. Then, later, when the Constitution was being written, James Madison was worried that adding a Bill of Rights, his spider's still over there, sorry, would limit the rights of citizens, but he decided in 1791 that it was smart to do that, and Anti-Federalists were like unanimous support for a Bill of Rights. They realized it was really necessary. So by the end of the year, 10 amendments were ratified by the individual states, and we have the Bill of Rights, and that basically has our 10 basic rights. It's the right, trial by jury, freedom of religion, things like that. And it limits kind of also the government's power a bit in the 9th and 10th by saying in the 9th that these were not the only powers Americans had, and in the 10th Amendment also saying that the powers that were not specifically given to the federal government were given to the states. And this that whole clause there kind of has some controversy later in trials, and people are trying, people are trying to figure out, is the 10th Amendment still hold true? Or, how much government should they have? So, sorry that was a little bit scattered. I kind of did that spur of the moment thing. So, yeah, that is the splits in the Constitution. Thanks for watching.